Just after my husband and I moved into our home in Potsdam, we discovered a corner of the yard with a 6-foot-high chain-link fence. The area was completely overgrown with weeds, such that passage inside was impossible. What could be behind the chain-link fence? This strange area of our yard was a direct line of sight from the bedroom window. Now, I don't watch horror movies because I already have a vivid imagination, but I couldn't stop thinking about this spooky plot of land behind the metal fence. I lost sleep for several nights while I imagined all of the possible scenarios. Now, this was our new house, but there was no way I was going inside that chain link fence. I feared what I might find there. A few weeks later, an arborist came by to check out a few of our trees. We walked him down to the chain-linked area and asked him if he'd be willing to bushwhack his way in there and tell us what was inside. I held my breath as he vanished into the long grass. A few minutes passed, and then a few more. Then he suddenly reemerged. "You've got an apple orchard here." "Really? An orchard?" "Yep. A small orchard of 13 young apple trees that are completely smothered in grapevine." "Oh, okay." Well, that knowledge prompted a rescue operation. Alan and I spent the next several weeks rescuing the apple trees from their invasive vines and the neglect that was stifling their growth. Once uncovered, the sun found its way to the trees, and one apple grew on the very top of one of the 13 trees. Unburdened by the weight of the vines and the dead branches, the tree showed that it craved growth. The next season, the sun found its way to the trees, and the next season, every branch on each of the 13 trees was weighed down with apples. Now, that got me looking at all of the trees on our property. And one by one, I started tending the trees, removing the dead branches and clipping off the little nubbins of inspired growth that never quite reached their full potential. I cut and I cut. And I used large hedge trimmers and small hand fiskers and one of those electric hedge trimmers. And when I thought that there wasn't anything left to clip on the trees, I clipped a bit more. And when I was finished, the trees looked bare. With all of that invasive vine and dead growth in them, the trees looked large and full. But when I clipped away, they looked spindly, exposed, and vulnerable. But then, in just a few weeks, something happened. With the dead branches removed, more sunlight was able to reach down into the trees, and with the vines and the rotted material cut out and every failed shoot clipped away, the branches were unburdened by the weight. And they bounced upward and they lifted themselves higher. This is what growth looks like. The trees showed me. They taught me. Now, when we remove the tangle and strangulation of the vines in our lives, be it a disagreement with a friend or a family member that's created negativity, or a conflict at work, or a disagreement with a neighbor that has you avoiding eye contact, or a failed attempt to change a situation that's left you frustrated and angry, deflated, or in despair. When you cut out the tangle and the rot and even the smallest shoot that's withered, the weight is lifted and it allows new energy to filter through for intellectual, emotional, and spiritual growth. The trees teach us this. The Druids, the ancient Celtic world's most esteemed religious leaders and my fierce and feisty ancestors, worshiped the trees. In fact, it's likely that the word druid is derived from the old Celtic root word deru, meaning oak tree, and weed, meaning to see or know. Hence, druid can be loosely interpreted as the knower of the oaks. Dr. Diana Beresford Kroger, a Canadian botanist, biochemist, and author of the book To Speak for the Trees, said, "Without trees, we could not survive. The trees laid the path for the human soul. Without trees, we could not survive. The trees laid the path for the human soul." Now, she's not talking about trees scrubbing our air by absorbing CO2 and producing oxygen. No, the trees laid the path for the human soul. Medieval Irish law codified the sacredness of different trees. An 8th century legal document called the Laws of the Neighborhood listed reasons that the 7 nobles of the wood, oak, hazel, holly, yew, ash, pine, and apple, occupied their exalted positions. In the Nordic tradition, the birch is the symbol of the Earth Mother, representing powers of growth and healing, whose strength comes from the ability to care for and support others and cultivate unconditional love for all beings. The Bible mentions trees 525 times. The only other living being mentioned more than trees is humans. In Islam, the Holy Scriptures narrate the tale of a boy throwing stones at a date tree to gather fruits. The Prophet Muhammad chastises the boy gently, telling him to eat what falls without harming the tree, showing respect toward the trees for the gifts that they bestow upon people. In the traditional liturgy for the conclusion of the Torah service, rabbis insert the verse, "She is a tree of life to them that grasp her, and all who hold on to her are happy." Now, this epitomizes the most famous metaphorical use of the tree as a symbol of Torah. Throughout the rabbinic canon, texts refer to the Torah as a tree of infinite knowledge, producing the fruits of new teachings over the generations. And because no Jewish object or concept garners more respect and is more central than the Torah within the Jewish tradition, it's illuminating that the tree is chosen as a primary symbol of the presence of Torah in the world. The Jewish tradition also recognizes Tu B'Shavat, a holiday similar to Passover, but celebrating the new year for trees. In Buddhism, Lord Buddha was born, enlightened, and reclaimed under the Bodhi fig tree, which is also referred to as the tree of awakening. It represents the capacity of every human to follow the steps of Buddha in achieving spiritual enlightenment. Just as in Buddhism, Hinduism, the world's 3rd largest religion, with more than 1 billion followers and regarded as one of the oldest religions dating back 9,000 years, holds the sacred ancient beliefs regarding the religious significance of trees. Trees are the givers of knowledge and enlightenment. Trees are revered. The Rig Veda, one of the 4 sacred Hindu texts, instructs not to cut down trees or uproot them because they provide protection. And every tree has a tree deity, a god or a goddess who's to be worshipped, respected, and given offerings. The Celts, the Norse, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, the Vedas, all recognize the spirituality and unequivocal sacredness of trees. And not as a discussion of biochemistry or climate change or political discourse or an annual Green Up celebration. No, each of these world religions recognizes the profound sacredness and sanctity of trees. So, what might you think about this sacredness? What do we think? In her sermon, November 2000, Reverend Lisa Ward of UU Fellowship of Hartford County, Maryland, shared, for Unitarian Universalists, 3 aspects of the living qualities of our relationship to trees come to mind as profound spiritual guidance. Deep-rootedness. Trees articulate to us that we be centered in our roots, well-grounded with healthy growth. As trees bend to reach sunlight, our growth and flexibility comes from our generosity of spirit and giving of oneself. As we're grounded by an acceptance that we're spiritual beings who seek meaning through a direct experience of the transcending mystery and a wonder which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces of life. Unconditional generosity. Fruit and nut trees give their bounty, and leaves fall and decay for future growth. Our secret to abundance is focusing on what we have to give to others, a circular energy of generosity. By giving, we stimulate regeneration of spirit, which promotes our own growth and our own expanse. Trees tell us this. And just as each tree has its own gifts to offer, so do each of us, each of you. Radical acceptance. Okay, not radical political, but radical, meaning thorough and far-reaching acceptance. From this strength of the tree, we encounter another life-giving principle. Radical acceptance. 2-legged, 4-legged, 6-legged, and winged creatures all enjoy the hospitality of trees. Homes are welcome in the tree, rest is offered, protection is given, perches are formed, and the year's growth is written deep in the rings within the trunk. All of this is offered by the tree in its steady solitude. Not loneliness, but grounded, generous solitude. Ever ready to receive what comes its way, acceptance of the stranger and the newcomer, welcoming those seeking respectful relationship. Trees show us this radical acceptance. So if we pull and tug the grapevines off of us and remove the dead limbs, what other spiritual messages might emerge? We might remove the burden of energies that no longer serve the greater good. We might create more space for light and love to pour in. We might connect with those forces which nourish growth. We might find balance to keep grounded in that which feeds the spirit. For it is then that we can stretch outward and beyond, and it's then that we can expand the positivity of our reach. It is then that we can generate hope and share our abundance. Trees innately convey this, and they await our awareness of their pure and precious life-giving energy. It is by this beauty we are blessed. It is in this moment that we breathe because of trees, because of trees, because of trees. Blessed be.